I used to believe I had it all. At 35 years old, I was standing at the peak of everything I'd ever dreamed of, co-founding a successful digital marketing agency in Chicago with my wife Melissa and my best friend Troy. What began as college brainstorming over pizza-stained napkins in a noisy dorm lounge had somehow transformed into Zenith Creative. That agency wasn't just our business, it was our child. We breathed life into it. Melissa, my wife, was the mastermind, the strategist, a force of nature in a tailored blazer. Troy, the magnetic client whisperer, he could close a deal like he was born to charm. And me, I was the glue, or at least that's what I thought. Melissa and I had been together since junior year in college. She was dazzling, intelligent, witty, with a gaze that made you believe you could conquer the universe if she was by your side. We tied the knot 2 years after graduation, and everything clicked into place. Troy was always around, orbiting us like a trusted moon. The three of us built a company, shared inside jokes, worked late, celebrated milestones. It was picture perfect, or so I convinced myself. But perfection is expensive, and sometimes the price is your soul. At first, the warning signs were too subtle to notice. Barely there red flags, hidden in late-night meetings, Melissa and Troy conveniently forgot to tell me about. Quick, loaded glances between them that lasted just a fraction too long. Private jokes that made me feel like a guest in my own life. I ignored it. Why wouldn't I? I trusted them both with every fiber of my being. I built a world around them, and when trust becomes routine, you don't check the locks until trust turns into a prison. One Thursday afternoon, I came home early from a canceled meeting. Melissa had left her iPad on the kitchen counter. I wasn't snooping. God knows I'd never done that before. But then, it popped up. One message. Short. Lethal. Last night was incredible. I hate sneaking around. He doesn't suspect a thing. Sent by Troy. I froze. My brain couldn't process the words. I tapped on the screen and opened a portal straight into hell. What I found was a living nightmare. Dozens upon dozens of messages. Photos. Selfies from hotel beds. Screenshots of jokes at my expense. Receipts from romantic dinners booked under the guise of client meetings. Even images of the two of them in our office. Our office. The one we bled for. They called me dull. Melissa mocked me for being too straight-edged, for caring too much. She complained that I lacked spontaneity. They laughed about how clueless I was. My body collapsed on the cold kitchen floor. I couldn't feel my limbs. My vision blurred. I was shaking with an emotion I couldn't even name. Betrayal so deep, it was like my entire identity had been ripped from my body. My wife and my best friend hadn't just stabbed me. They spun in joy as I bled. But I didn't say a word. Not that night. Not even the next. I needed to process, to plot, to breathe without screaming. 2 days later, I printed everything. I labeled the file Truth and filled it with the most gut-wrenching messages. Then I scheduled an emergency meeting at Zenith. Melissa and Troy walked in, smiling, until I slid the folder across the conference table. Melissa turned pale. Troy straightened up like he'd been slapped. I looked them both in the eyes. "You can keep it," I said calmly. "The agency. All of it. I'm done." Melissa stuttered something. Troy didn't move. I didn't care. I left. I didn't pack a thing. I abandoned the office, the partnership, the marriage, everything I had sacrificed for. All of it tainted. Worthless. I went off-grid. No social media. Changed my number. Sold our condo. For weeks I hopped from hotel to hotel, Airbnb to Airbnb. I even spent a month in Montana, hiding in a cabin, just trying to remember how to breathe. Silence was cruel, but it was necessary. Because in the quiet, I met myself again. I began journaling, not for healing, not yet, but to survive. I wrote about love, betrayal, and how some explosions don't kill you. They forge something stronger in the wreckage. I decided I wasn't going to disappear. I was going to rebuild, not to prove anything to them, but to remind myself of who I was before I gave my life to traitors. 6 months later, I launched Ascend Digital, a leaner, smarter agency built on integrity. I was back to the ramen noodle hustle, scraping every cent, sacrificing sleep for vision. But this time, I had experience. I had pain. I had fire. By year 1, we broke even. By year 2, we were outperforming Zenith at their peak. I never gloated. I didn't need to. The industry whispered the truth. Clients left Zenith in droves. Stories leaked about shady billing, missed deadlines, and internal dysfunction. Karma doesn't wear a watch, but she shows up. Then Emma entered my life. She was a freelance designer I'd hired for a client rebrand. Smart, grounded. She didn't flash brilliance. She radiated it quietly. We talked late into the night about typography, design psychology, color harmony. It was electric, but not in a fiery, chaotic way. It felt natural. We started grabbing coffee, then late night walks. Then one night, she showed up with a sketchbook filled with concepts for Ascend. She'd drawn one line across a cracked logo. Broken doesn't mean useless. It means tested. That night I opened up. I told her everything. Melissa, Troy, the implosion. Emma didn't recoil. She reached out, took my hand, and simply said, "Thank you for trusting me." That word, trust, it used to make me recoil. But from her, it felt safe. We moved in together months later. We collaborated on campaigns, won awards, hired people who cared, and for the first time in what felt like a century, I laughed without guilt. Then one day, Melissa left me a voicemail. Her voice trembled. "I don't know if you'll even hear this, but I'm sorry. Troy left. The agency's gone. You were the only one who ever really cared. I was too blind to see it." I didn't call back. Not because I hated her, because I didn't need to. Sometimes, forgiveness doesn't require a conversation. Sometimes, it's just the part of you that was wounded choosing to stop bleeding. A year later, Emma and I stood on stage at a creative summit. We'd just been awarded Best Workplace Culture. I looked out into the audience, hundreds of eyes. Years ago, I was curled on my kitchen floor, drowning. Now, I was here, alive, loved. In my speech, I said, 3 years ago, I lost everything. My marriage, my best friend, my business. But sometimes, the worst thing to ever happen to you is just the beginning of the best chapter you'll ever live. You just don't know it yet. The applause was deafening. Emma kissed my cheek, and I, for the first time in years, felt whole. Melissa once said I was too predictable, that I lacked edge. But what she never understood was that I didn't need chaos to be passionate. I needed honesty. And through the betrayal, I found it. I didn't just build a new company. I built a new me. Not bitter, not broken, just better. And this time, I get to share it with someone who never made me choose between love and ambition. She chose both. She chose me. And for the first time in forever, I chose me too. The end.